Hello. I'm so excited. I'm here with Coach Tori Gordon today. I'm Jessica Haley, peak performance expert with Verified Investing, and we are here with Verified Mindset. And I'm so excited. This special guest is a dear, dear friend of mine, and she's also a peak performance coach. She is a podcast host. She is a speaker. She is also a breathwork facilitator, and she just hit one of the most epic milestones by impacting over 1 million people on all her social platforms. And I'm having a dear friend moment. I'm just really proud of you for all that you're doing on this planet and the impact that you're making. And I'm just really excited to be with you today and pick your brain in a really fun way, because I know how much value you can add to this audience. And there's such an array of people watching on this show, and from the financial sector, from people that just want to, be optimized and understand self-mastery in all of these different ways. And so I don't think I could have brought on a better guest to do all of these different things when it comes to human optimization and emotional regulation and all of these fun topics that we're going to bounce around today and talk about. But before I do, I want to just, let people know a little bit about who Tori is. So I'm going to throw it to you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and be part of Verified Mindset, because this is the world that I operate and live in professionally and also personally, and really honing into what stands in my way from achieving the goals that I have for myself and being able to just operate at my highest level of peak performance and just reach my potential is what I'm obsessed with, and what I'm obsessed with helping other people achieve as well. And so I'm just grateful to share some space with you today and talk about the things that I found in my journey that work for me.
I love it. I'm so excited. So I want to dive right in. And I really want to start with one of the favorite concepts that I know that we really share in our kind of mindset. But you talk a lot about going out and kind of playing in the game of life. And you talk about playing on offense versus on defense. And I know that we've really shared in that, because you can kind of play in survival or you can go in creation mode. And I really want you to kind of guide us through that game of life and how to play in that offensive role.
Yeah, I think this is such a good place to start this conversation, because ultimately, I believe that life is our playing ground. It is our battlefield. It is where we get to learn how to get better at this thing called life, because we're here for a reason. And I'm here to try and figure out what that is. And what I've learned is there have been so many times in my life where life just felt really hard. And no matter how much effort I was putting in, I couldn't seem to get out of that or get away from that feeling that everything is just harder than it should be, harder than I would like it to be. And that came from living and playing this game called life from a specific perspective or point of view. And that is playing what I call playing defense. Like in any sport, we've got the defense and the offense, and the defense have a certain set of skills that they know how to do and how to execute on in order for the other team to prevent the other team from moving forward, right? We want our team to do well. That's what the name of the game is. But when we are in a defensive posture in life, it is one in which most of us have been programmed to play. It's the position on the field you've been playing most of your entire life, unless you've done some intentional work to reframe your perspective, to have a different mindset shift around how we show up to life, how we show up to our jobs and our relationships every day. So playing defense means that most people are playing what you said, Jess, in survival mode. They're playing with one foot and back, and they're playing not to lose.
Right? I was about to say playing not to lose.
Yeah, they're not going out with intention and maybe with clarity and drive. They're saying, how can I assess what's going on in my world, in the markets, and in my relationships, at home, in my health, and just make sure I prevent something bad from happening. That's what defense does. If you think about football, they're just preventing the other team from scoring. They're not actually moving down the field. They're not the ones that are as actually responsible for scoring the goal or making the forward progress. It's about waiting back to see, what do I need to do? Now, this is important, and it's part of the built-in survival mechanisms of our brain. It's necessary, but I don't believe it's the best way we can optimize for our full potential in reaching the goals that we have. So where I tell people to start is really we have to understand how we got to where we are in the first place, why we're reactive, why we have the perspective that we have when we look out on our lives or the world, and maybe we're afraid to go for it, we're afraid to make certain decisions, we're afraid to put ourselves out there. And how do we switch to offense? And doing that requires you to learn new skills. You've been playing and practicing the same way your whole life, and to just go and now I'm going to be a quarterback, now I'm going to be a running back, now I'm going to be a shooter or whatever. That's a whole different level skill set. And that requires intentionality, focus, effort, consistency. And I think those are the skills. What does that actually look like practically, which is what I help my clients with.
That small distinction, and we just have to go back to, instead of playing not to lose, like truly playing to win. I mean, that's so huge. And I just love everything that you just said. When it comes to that skill set and implementing that new skill set, we're going to have to, in trading, what I've learned in charts is you hit these resistance points right before you're about to have a huge breakout to the upside. And those resistance points, a lot of times that's when we feel like we're beating our heads up against the wall and we can't do this. But in order to expand that new capacity, in order for that new setup and breakout to happen, you have to hit resistance points. You have to go through those moments of like contrast, or those moments of feeling like you're being stretched or you're in training in these different ways. And I just really love the way that you framed all of that. And I think what I love about your background and what I've really admired from everything that I've seen with the work that you've done is you do a lot with giving people the tangible tools and the techniques, and you kind of weed through all of the things that are trending and all of the life hacks and the 5 steps and this and that, and you simplify them down and you allow people to really just go back home to themselves in the easiest way. And can you give some tools and some techniques or some different simple ways that people can just calm their nervous system down, get back to the green zone, center themselves, and show up with that clear and level-headed, energy day to day?
Yeah. And I think learning how to do just that is the building the skills to move into offense and moving into a position where I'm playing to win. And we've got to decide and define, what does winning mean? What does it mean for your sales team? What does it mean for your business? What does it mean for your health? What does it mean for your relationship? What does succeeding look like and mean to you? And that's subjective and it's personal. So I think everybody listening needs to start there. What does winning look like? What does how will I know if I'm winning in my life in general? Because maybe you're doing that and living that now, and you're not even recognizing it or giving yourself credit for what you're doing already. So that's where I tell people to start. But I think, and I appreciate your reflection. I'm trying to take all the information that's out there. Like, where do I start? How do I be the best me ultimately? And there are a couple things that have helped me move from defense to offense. And I think it's important to start with understanding why playing defense isn't helpful, why being in survival when you're trying to make big trades or big decisions or hires or whatever is why you want to do it, and how you can do it from an offensive perspective. Defense is our innate drive to stay alive. And where does that come from? Right. And let's just think back 10,000 years ago, and you are hunting and gathering in the woods, and a tiger comes out with the intent to kill. Your body launches into fight or flight. And that's where that comes from. And everybody listening to the show can think of a time, probably this week, that something has happened. You've got an unexpected phone call. Something happened in the markets you didn't see coming. You're having to adapt. You're having to change. And now all of a sudden you're in panic. You're like, okay, what do I do? How do I fit it all in? When that happens, when the tiger comes out, right, you're sent into a stress response. And I think it's important to understand the simple practices I'm going to teach you about, why they're even important. Because what you have to start is understanding how stress is impacting the body, then we can see why these practices or hacks are even worth our time and effort, right? So when we go into fight or flight, what is happening in the body? One, your digestion will flood with acid.
Yeah,
and that's to shut down your digestion because you need all the energy to fight or flee this tiger. That acid is going to seep onto your skin so that you don't taste good. So if the tiger bites you, you don't taste good. That's actually what is prematurely aging us when our skin is overly acidic for long periods of time. We want to be doing this for the long haul. We want to be optimizing for longevity of success, not just short spurts, right? So we need to think about that. Your bladder and your bowels are going to evacuate so that you're light on your feet so you can flee that tiger. Your immune system's going to shut down and go on the back burner because who cares if you get cancer if you're going to be killed by a tiger? Your adrenaline levels are going to increase. Your cortisol levels are going to increase. So there is a series of chemical reactions that are happening, which are all useful if your demand is a tiger that's coming out of the woods trying to kill you. But if reading and reacting to financial charts, anticipating market swings, breakups, your boss, your travel, in-laws, if that's the thing, the tiger that's looming, that series of chemical reactions is now maladaptive and is now disallowing you to perform at the top of your game. That is not helpful anymore. And yet that is how most people are living and operating day to day, especially in high stress environments like the financial sector. So stress is responsible. When you look at the study, stress is responsible for 90% of all doctors' visits. And now on top of that, we just had a global pandemic. Loneliness is showing us that the physiological, like the effects of that is worse than smoking. And all of these life changes, working from home, coming back into office, all of this stuff, being in isolation, the divorces that have happened over the last couple of years because of COVID, entire industries shutting down, losing friends, moving. Like stress isn't something that's just happening mentally. I think that's important for people to understand. It's not just happening in your brain. Your brain is responsible for printing every single cell in your body. So if you have a brain of stress, guess what? You have a body of stress. Okay. So if a tiger were to come out and right now, within 30 seconds, you would have adrenaline and cortisol in your bloodstream. Within 10 minutes, you would have adrenaline and cortisol in your bone marrow.
Wow.
So that is impacting. That is what it looks like to be playing defense. That is the implication of being reactive to your circumstances that are constantly fluctuating, that we can't control. So we either try to control everything and realize how futile that is, and that we are like exhausted and depleted, or we can do it a different way. And that's what I'm here to like talk about, is what is the new way when this isn't working anymore, because it's having a direct impact on that performance. So when you start, here are the hacks, right? And you've probably heard them if you like have been listening to this show, but things like meditation and breath work have changed my life. There are other things, but these are like baseline requirements for me, because, and I'm going to give you the science behind why, not just because I need another thing to do. My schedule is busy already. And same with everybody listening here. They're like, I've got plenty of demands, whether it's kids, family, work, multiple jobs, whatever. When you start to meditate, when you start to breathe, what happens is you start to have dopamine and serotonin, which are the bliss chemicals in your bloodstream, the opposite of the stress hormones and chemicals in your in your brain. Within 10 minutes, within 30 seconds, you've got the serotonin and dopamine in your bloodstream. In 10 minutes, you've got it in your marrow. So meditation and breath work, specifically meditation is what I'm talking right now. It's not a pedicure for your brain. Okay. It's the single most important piece of mental hygiene you can do.
Oh, drop this.
You brush your teeth every day because you don't want to have stinky breath. You need to be sitting in silence or in meditation. I'm not saying you need to do it for 30 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes.
What does that look like? Like, give me like the actual picture of what that would look like.
Yeah. So for me, I've done a series of different types of things over the years, whether it's guided meditations, sitting in silence, sitting in stillness, focusing on my breath, Here's what I've found. There's a specific type of meditation that is highly, highly effective for me, that is 10 times going to get you deeper rest than sleep. It's called Ziva meditation. And why I recommend it is because it's most people, when they meditate, they go to their phone, they go pull up an app. That's like telling an alcoholic not to drink when they're in the bar, right? You've got your phone and you're trying to meditate and get rid of distractions, yet you're using your phone to do that, right? So it's like, how can we get rid of that? Ziva is a technique that I've learned from one of my teachers and mentors, Emily Fletcher. And it uses a different, it's not just something you're listening to, it uses a mantra. Some of the top peak performers talk about when you assess, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of peak performers, what are their hacks? They talk about transcendental meditation. They talk about breath work. They talk about cold plunges. They talk about darkness retreats. They talk about these things are next level, and that them being a absolutely non-negotiable. Like I said, it's one of the greatest forms of mental hygiene you can do. And the reason being is you are, when you meditate, when you focus on the present moment, on each breath as it comes one after another, you are filling your internal reservoir with adaptation energy. And what does that mean? Adaptation energy is really just your ability to adapt to change, or the change of demand. And how many of us wish we had team members like that, or wish we had spouses like that, wish we had friends like that? This like, oh, you want to change the deadline? Cool, I've got it. You're working in the moment. It's like, oh, you want to do this? Yes, let's go. Because they're in the now. They're in the now, the new now as it comes up, and you can adapt. And I think the rate in which things are changing in our world and in our industries, more than ever, I believe that the biggest marker of success is going to be someone's ability to adapt. And what's happening is most of us aren't adapting and changing. We are expecting our circumstances and the people around us to adapt to us. We're like, no, this is how I am, and you need to change to accommodate me. And so as we meditate, we fill up our internal reservoir with adaptation energy that says, I can be with whatever is present, whatever comes up for me right now. I can be with it. I can be with it in this moment, this breath. Here's a new one. I can release what just was, and here I am with what's present in this moment, which is requiring a new demand, which is asking something new of me to be here. Instead of being up in my mind, thinking, calculating, strategizing, you're able to even diagnose what is needed in this moment. What is the demand asking of me right now? And that is a capacity that is grown and developed when we meditate and when we focus on things like our breath.
Okay, so when you talk about breath work, give me some very easy, tangible, if somebody's never done breath work before and they want to start implementing breath work in. And obviously I'm going to go look up Ziva meditation as soon as I get off of this, because I'm really curious what that looks like now. But I want to know, what are some tangible ways that I can implement breath work into my day-to-day life today, quickly?
Yeah. Put your phone down, put a song on, and literally just inhale through your belly, inhale through your chest. You can do something called box breathing. It's a really easy way to start. So create a box with your breath. It's 4 counts in, hold for 4 counts, 4 breaths out, 4 seconds out, and then hold for 4 counts. So you inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and do that 15 times and see if you don't notice a shift in your physiology. You become a little bit more grounded, a little bit more present. You drop out of the mind into the body, where you can even assess, oh, I'm here. Despite what's happening around me, I can feel where I am. I know where I am. And what's happening in that moment is you're down regulating your nervous system. You're de-exciting the nervous system, which is going to bring you out of that fight or flight state and get you into the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest system that creates all of this spaciousness and releases all of the energy that was going to fighting the tiger. You bring that back to yourself. You become more powerful when you can ground and de-excite the nervous system. And the breath is one of the best and freest, quickest tools to do that. And you can start with box breathing.
So 10 to 15 times, we've actually implemented this at the office a bunch, but 10 to 15 times, when you were talking about being in survival mode and your digestion being so affected so quickly, I was just thinking, wow, the amount of times that I eat on the go is out of control. Like I mean, you've seen it. I'm always on the go. And so I'm like, oh, let me just have a snack, or let me just do this and just get it done. But I'm probably not actually digesting any of that food because I'm on the go, and I'm in probably a high level of my nervous system's, spun up. So I need to be doing 10 to 15 box breaths before I even eat. And that would probably completely change my digestive system, which is really, that's a fun little hack.
Because why, if there is a tiger and you're in that fight or flight response, you need all hands on deck, all energy to be able to deal with that threat. But the threats of our modern day culture are not that, yet we're still responding to them as they are, and we're experiencing the negative side effects of living in that state. So yeah, something like 10 to 15 breaths is just a simple reset. I actually just put out a new bonus episode on my YouTube channel from my podcast, which is a nervous system reset. It's about 15 minutes. If you want to do something a little bit more, which it includes an immersive meditation and breathwork practice. And it's a little bit more intense. It's a little bit more involved. But if you want to feel a shift in your physiology and your internal state of being and how it feels to be in your body, to be in your mind, and to be who you are, then I highly recommend you guys go check that out. But it's something you can also explore on YouTube and download like breathwork practices for. But it's really about de-exciting the nervous system so that you can, again, like you said, pull out that power and that energy back to you so that you can use it on more productive things.
I love this conversation so much. I've had such a profound experience going to one of your breathwork events, and I had so many breakthroughs in a way that I can't even really truly describe. I actually started to tear up. I started to feel like this release of energy. It felt like things that were stagnant were metabolized, and I was able to walk out feeling so much lighter, and things that I didn't even know were there came up. And I watched the same thing happen for so many other people in that room at that event. What happens if you don't go do that? Like, what happens if that sits inside of you like toxic waste? Like, what's the consequences of that?
Yeah. Well, you probably can relate to this. I know this is my story, is that I'm overly exhausted. I'm depleted. I am lacking mental clarity. I'm in a brain fog. I feel like everything is difficult. And what's happening when you said I felt like a release of energy, when we breathe in a certain format, which I take clients through and guide them in this one, it might be the first time you've had a space held for you just to be and not need to do. Because how often do we prioritize? Most of us, we think, oh, I don't have time for that. It's not productive. Meditation, breath work, like that's for people who are like, don't have jobs or just like want to gallivant around Bali or whatever. It's like, no, this isn't just something that people do as a luxury. It's an essential part of our livelihood because, like you said, every day that we're just going through the motions, we get up, we are immediately looking at our phones, our tasks, our to-do lists, our emails. We are in reactivity immediately. Who needs me? What text do I have to respond to? We're reacting to those things instead of having a moment, having time set aside to decide, how do I want to move forward in my day? What is my intention? How do I want to make sure I've got the energy within me, collect that before I go give it away in the world all day? And most people, they just start up and they give it away and they're reacting. And so one of the most powerful things before we even start breathwork is just that you have a space held for you to be able to fill your own cup. Because what do you have to give that's worth anything to anybody if you're dry and empty? Nothing. It's like giving poison out in a medicine bottle to people. It's not useful to your team, to your spouse, to your community, etc. So we have to get out of the mindset that this is not productive and start thinking about how useful this is, and that actually it's going to help us do more. And it's the shift from this perspective of I need to do something so that I can be someone in order to have this thing that I want. And what breath work, what meditation, what my perspective is kind of inviting people into is that no, there's actually a different way to do it, which is how do I focus on who am I? Who do I be? Who am I being? Who do I need to be today? So then I can do and show up. So then ultimately that I can have. So it goes from do, be, have to be, do, have. And that is a shift. And breath work ultimately is creating that space for you to be, so that you can just be with the moment, be with the breath. So much that your prefrontal cortex, your mind gets to shut off and have a nap, which so many of us need. We're like, I'm constantly thinking, analyzing, thinking, strategizing, like it's overwhelming. It's like, oh, what if I could relax and I could turn that off for a couple minutes? And when we breathe in that way, the prefrontal cortex goes sort of the back seat and the body gets in the front seat, the body that knows how to heal you. The body that if you cut it and it bleeds, it knows how to repair itself because there's a built-in intelligence that doesn't need you to think about how am I going to get there? It just knows. And so when the body's in the driver's seat, which happens as a result of breathing in a certain format at a certain pace, it knows how to start to release the things you don't need, the unprocessed trauma, the repressed emotion, the stuck, stagnant energy, all of that dense energy that feels heavy and like you're carrying the weight of the world. And you start to allow that to come up, which is the expansion, the release that you felt, which is like taking a beach ball that you've held underwater. Takes a lot of energy, by the way, that you're not able to give out, and it allows it to come to the surface. And then ultimately, as a result, you feel lighter, you feel more spacious, you feel more at ease, more connected to you instead of connected to your mind and your thoughts and the stories that are running them. And that, my friend, is a powerful place to be and to like live from, because how different would our lives be? How much more can we accomplish if we live from that place instead of the incessant running the rat race and doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? And so it offers you a different way, so that you can have more energy to do the things you want to do.
It's the slow down to speed up. And I'm curious. I'm going to continue down this breathwork road because I'm so curious on this, because I've experienced something so, huge and profound when I was at one of your events, but it was like an hour long, and it was a space that was created, and there was all of these different aspects of me removing myself from my environment and my, day-to-day stressors and all of that stuff that also was a part of the experience, the curated experience, to get me to have that transformation. How do you think that I'm able to still slow my nervous system down in a way if I'm doing 15 box breaths before I'm about to leave the house in the morning with a 10-minute meditation in my same environment? Are we still able to have, is it the consistency of that that's going to unlock those benefits? Or is it the, how do I still have that transformation consistently? Is that still going to give me the same benefits, even though it's such a short and not so curated experience?
Yeah, I think if you go to that bonus piece of content on my YouTube channel, I think you'll find that in that short amount of time, in your own house, in your car, you can still have that shift. Absolutely, it's possible.
Okay.
So you don't need an hour-long curated space with a guided facilitator to necessarily experience a shift. Now, I think there's two types of breath work. There's breath work for transformation, which is that longer format, ceremonial type experience, and breath work for like relaxation and restoration, which is more like integrative. It's something you can sprinkle into your lifestyle. It becomes part of your being and the way that you operate, right? So I infuse these things into a lot of areas of my life. It's not just a single act that I do one time. It becomes part of my operating system, how I live. So just like meditation doesn't have to be something you do for 10 minutes once or twice a day, it's you start to increase your capacity and your awareness to be able to check in with yourself on a consistent basis and assess what is needed in the moment. So you, by practicing a couple breaths in the shower, before you go to sleep, when you're hitting a midday funk, to get energy in the morning, there's so many purposes and uses for it that you can do it sort of sporadically for the different like needs that you have. But really what it's doing is it's increasing your awareness to know what you need so that you can adapt and give it to yourself in the moment. If you know my digestion is messed up and this is going to help me actually digest my food so that I can feel good and I can have the energy from it, etc. Like why wouldn't we give that to ourselves? And it's not going to take a ton of time, but I think it's really about increasing your awareness internally, because most people don't know what they need. They don't know what they're feeling or what they're internally experiencing outside of the fact that it's like, I don't like it, or it's bad, or it's wrong, or I want to feel something else. This increases our ability to become self-aware so that we can actually solve the problem that we are facing instead of just having to like endure the problem, which a lot of people do. They're just like, I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way I'm thinking. My mind's running, but like, I don't know what else to do. This increases your awareness to know how to solve that issue. That's whatever you're facing in the moment.
I love this so much. I think that because these are all things that we know, but it's not things that we necessarily, for me, I'll take full responsibility. I know I should be doing these things consistently. I know how to do a lot of these things. And I still choose, whenever I'm getting into these really busy times in my life, I still choose to go grab a cup of coffee instead of probably sit down and meditate, because I'm externally fueling my body in a way that can just make it keep on running. I'm taking the horse and whipping it versus slowing down to speed up truly. And I find myself doing that the most when I'm, obviously I have the most on my plate, instead of that's the time where you need to do this the most, is the time that I do it the least, and the time where I have the most time I'm like, meditating and doing all the things that's the least. So it's really, really interesting. I'm appreciating this conversation because of the way that it's being framed. And I think that the audience that is probably going to be watching this the most are people in the financial world, where 9:30 a.m. when they turn on that television or their monitor or whatever, and they're looking at all of the numbers, if they just 9:15 to 9:30 did your nervous system reset and then went into their day with this clarity and this grounded energy and this ability to be able to see from this bird's eye view, they're in the green zone. They're not making these decisions from this from this emotional place, but from this really grounded, logical, they're monk mode, right? Like, they're in monk mode. They're able to really see and decipher and be a sniper with their energy. So,
I could give you some more, but here's the thing. I think the professionals, the people who are succeeding at the highest levels, the real champions of the game, are doing the basics better.
Yep. Truth.
We don't need more things to do. We need to get better at doing the things we already know we need to do. Yeah. I don't want to add, here's another thing that you need that's on your should list. I should be doing this. No, we need to just go back to the things we all have already learned and have already heard about and actually apply them. That's what people need to do. Yes. Don't just listen to this show and absorb information and let it not turn into wisdom, because knowledge is not power. Yeah. Applied knowledge is power. So actually go meditate, actually go breathe, actually create 10 to 15 minutes for yourself to start with a self-reflection practice or stillness practice, or just journal about how you woke up that morning and how the intention you want to set for your day. Those are the basics. So become a man or a woman that's committed to doing the basics better than everybody else, because I promise you, LeBron or whoever is not doing their regular drills. This should just be drill as part of your day, because one, as you do it consistently, you'll actually start to experience the benefits of it, and it becomes more fun. Things aren't fun when you're not good at them at the beginning. Right? So we don't need to have this judgment that we need to do it right. We don't meditate. We don't breathe to be good at breath work or to be good at meditation. We do it to get better at life. Right? I'm not trying to meditate to be a meditator. I'm trying to meditate so I can get better at being the best version of myself. And when we see it from that lens, I think it just gives us a different level of permission to actually enjoy the process instead of thinking we need to add something else to our to-do list. My recommendation is focus on being. Who do you need to be? The thing you want to achieve, the thing you want to like, that goal line you're moving towards, what version of you do you need to be, and what version of you gets there? What do they do? How do they show up? How do they structure their morning? How do they optimize their energy? And start to do that. And I think that's the best place for people to start.
I appreciate that answer so much. I want to ask you a question, just knowing you in a deep and meaningful way, and knowing what you've experienced in your life, and knowing that there's a lot of people on this planet that have gone through some hard things. I don't know if I've really ever met anybody that has gone through so many hard things so back to back to back, and the amount of loss and death and trauma that you've experienced so close together, yet the perspective that you have as you live your life, it's probably one of the most beautiful things about you that I love so much, is you've given me this permission to see life in a different way, to see time in a different way. You've never been hardened by all of the experiences that you've had that most would probably be hardened from. You have actually come out and lived life in an even more deep and meaningful way, and it's so beautiful to see. And it's something that I've really collected from you and tried on and really tried to add into my perspective in the way that I live. How have you been able to see life in that way after going through so many dark things that, I really want anybody that's going through something dark in their life to be able to come away realizing that there is so much light from that experience as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that reflection, and just like recognizing that in me. I don't think I'm unique in the sense that I've been through hard things. Whether someone listening has experienced loss or trauma of their own, trauma doesn't discriminate. So at some point we will all go through some serious adversity at times. And, but as you said, I've come up close and personal with death quite a few times. And it's taught me honestly the most about what it means to truly live and the preciousness of our time. And I know there are a lot of people listening to this show are in the financial industry, but I'll tell you that the greatest asset that you have is the time that you have. And none of that is promised. None of that is guaranteed. The only guarantee and guaranteed outcome is that we're all going to die at some point. And although that might sound harsh to people, it is a truth, and it's a real reality that we all need to come into awareness of. And I think the quicker that we do understand that our time is limited, we get about the business of doing and living in the way that is the most meaningful and purpose-filled. Because I had to do a real reprioritization of what was meaningful and important to me. And I think the thing that has allowed me to keep the perspective that I have is that I truly have a growth mindset, in the sense that I see everything as an opportunity to improve and to grow and to learn and evolve, even the hardest things I've ever been through. Because when my sister was diagnosed at 21 years old with leukemia, he sat our family down and he said, we have two choices. We have hope or we have despair. And we are going to choose hope. And what I learned when he told me that I had a choice. Where I didn't realize I had a choice before. I knew then that I had a choice in how I was going to see and perceive my circumstance. And I was going to see it through the lens of hope. And so I hope that resonates with somebody who is going through something challenging right now, that you get to decide, are you going to see this as a hopeless situation and that you're never going to get out of and be victim of that circumstance? Or are you going to stay in a place of power and say, what can I learn? How can I grow? What is this teaching me? What is this asking? Where is this asking for me to expand my faith, my trust, my surrender, my acceptance? And let that break you open instead of break you down. And I think that's what I've done in my life, is let the hardest things break me open and make me more of who I was before than break me down. And I hope other people will do the same, because I don't know another way I would want to live. It's a really sad, hopeless place to live if you kind of follow the alternative path.
The perception is so huge though, because it's not easy in that moment when you're so zoomed in and you're so tapped into that emotion and you're so unable to access that logic to create that new vantage point of perspective. Like, what's the best way that you're able to really see a different perspective, a different side, a different view from that when you're in that emotion?
I think give yourself grace and give yourself time, passion to be on the journey and to be in progress with that. Because you see me today standing quite a distance away from those events in my life. 2018 was the last loss I experienced. So there's some time in between where I've really gotten to like wrestle with some of these things and grow in a lot of these areas. Because trust me, when I was going through that loss, I didn't think, oh, I can see how this is life asking me to grow. And like, no, I was in pain. I was in grief. I was, overwhelmed. And I think it's important to normalize that. And the woman you're hearing from today is not the woman I was then. But here's the thing, whether it's breath work or meditation or whatever, it's like, it's not because I have those practices. It doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean I don't have big feelings. It doesn't mean I don't get overwhelmed or I don't feel defeated at times. It just means that I'm not running on empty and that I still am connected to a source that can help me come back to that green zone, right? When I am in the red. It doesn't mean I don't go to the red. Sometimes I do, but I have tools that help me to come back to that place of power when I forget and I give that power away to my circumstances or my situation. So I think that's important for people to have that perspective, that we don't, I don't think the fear goes away, or I don't think we necessarily move on, but we learn to move forward with better tools and practices to help us stay in an empowered place, in a healed place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about not going to the red. It's how would you know light without dark? How would you know happiness without sadness? How would you know what you want unless you know what you don't want? Like, it's the contrast is there to give us clarity, and it's more of a choice to stay there for a long period of time or not. And being able to connect to that hope versus the despair allows for that shift to start moving towards the light again. And I definitely agree with that. I want to shift the conversation to a fun question, because I know that this is something that both of us share in kind of the way that we view our world. We like to take a picture of something in the future that we're creating. We like to throw it out into the future, and then we like to walk into it, and see the little situations and circumstances and fun synchronicities line up and turn that thought to a thing. What is something that Tori Gordon is turning from a thought to a thing this year?
Really, we're just focusing on, we as in my team, but me personally, is just focusing on expanding in the areas where we're already experiencing growth. But I just want to do more of what I'm doing now. I get to speak to people all over the country. I get to have a big impact on our social media platforms and on our podcast, the Coachable podcast. And the thing that I'm continuing to just pour fuel on the fire is just reaching as many people with our message as possible of how to make this journey from darkness to light, from defense to offense, and really equip people with the tools, resources, and information to transform their lives from the inside out, because that's where it starts. It doesn't happen by changing all of our circumstances and then we'll feel better. So how do I start to feel good? And then I start to see my circumstances change. And we just want to continue to elevate and expand that audience and that message. So if you're listening, please follow along. The Coachable podcast, or you can follow me on social media and just share it with friends. If anything that we say, I say, Jess says here resonates with you, like, do yourself a favor and like pass it on. Be a hero to somebody. Like, it might be the thing that people need to hear. So continuing our relationship with the Win here in Las Vegas, expanding that audience, and possibly, going global one day, going out of the US to do more speaking as well. But just more of the same on just a different level is what we're super excited about.
I love that. I love that. I have another fun question for you. So what's one thing that you didn't learn in school that you wish you had? Or let me frame it in a different way. The shit they don't teach you in school. What did you not learn that you wish you're like, why in the world do they not teach this in school? Maybe you learned it the hard way out in real life.
That my suffering, was a byproduct of my expectations and my attachment to a result. When I give up the need for a result to experience something in my life in a certain way, I create spaciousness for it actually to come in naturally. And I think, life, our culture, not just school, doesn't teach you that. It's like everywhere that we go, it's like we get attached to our expectations of how we think life should be. And life has been my ultimate teacher to teach me how to stay committed to my goals, but be unattached and create space for how those actually amplify and manifest in my life. Because when I'm white knuckling life and I'm trying to force it and make it happen, I actually get in my own way. And no one ever taught me that. Life did.
Man, force versus flow is a real thing. Oh, so real, so real. Okay, so can you please tell everybody that's watching where they can find you?
Yeah, definitely. You can go to my website and get a lot of information about me. It's torigordon.com, TORIGORDON.com. I'm on social media, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, at the Tori Gordon. And then I run the Coachable podcast, which is a personal development, spirituality, and entrepreneurship podcast that we run here in Las Vegas out of the Win. And you can find that streaming on all platforms.
I just can't thank you enough for this conversation. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm so grateful for you as a human in my life. But it's just been really, really cool to see your journey and to see all of the impact that you're making. And I know that anybody that's watching this episode is going to get so much value from it. And you're going to really impact another audience of people that are going to be huge Tori Gordon and Coachable fans for sure. So thank you so much for coming on to Verified Mindset. And I'm just very, very grateful for you, my friend.
Thank you. Continue doing what you're doing. I love you. And I appreciate you for having me on.